Hey guys, and welcome back to the internet. So, I hear it's Memorial Day today. I mean, I feel like I've been trapped in a cave, forced to make videos every single day for the last 3 months. So I don't even know what month it is half the time. But let's get into the first story called, Well, I Quit Again, I guess. So I left my part-time job at a department store with a red logo about 6 months earlier to accept full-time work at a red Polo Ed grocery store. There was a new store manager that had just transferred in, and he was about the worst customer service tyrant I ever met, so it was all very well timed. We didn't work together long enough to learn each other's names, but I'll never forget his catchphrase, "Give him the pickle," which was his way of saying, "The customer is always right," for some weird reason. Anyway, I needed a new pair of uniform pants, and decided to stop by and scope out the ladies' clearance on my way home from work. Not thinking the uniform would be an issue, as the department store didn't use uniforms when I worked there. I began to start digging through the clearance racks, mostly undisturbed. I worked in men's originally, and it was a large store, so different departments didn't interact a lot. When a wild Karen appeared. She says, "Do you know where the formal dresses are?" So me, not even looking up. I think they're around the back of the store." She says, "Can you see if you have this in the back? Medium?" She holds up a sweater on a hanger. I say, no, sorry, I don't work here. Someone can help you at the counter around the corner." She says, "But you're in uniform." I say, "I actually work at such and such grocery store. The people here wear red lanyards with the company name." She says, "But you knew where the dresses are." I say, "Sorry, someone at the counter can help you." So at this point, she throws the hanger-sweater combo in my direction and actually stamps her foot like a toddler. I figure at this point that it's going to de-escalate, and I should probably just lay low until this woman finds a real employee. So I wander away to the housewares, while Karen screams threats of, "You better hope I don't find the counter," and "I'll have your job." It's about 10 minutes later, when Karen marches up with the store manager in tow. I'm busy admiring the weird 17-in-1 breakfast maker they're selling. Now it's important to mention at this point that sometimes during the reign of the store manager and my 6-month absence, a uniform change has been made. Floor staff still only wore lanyards, but our receiving and stock associates wore red polos, so I kind of understand now how that last part happened, but still. I roll my eyes harder than I knew they could roll. The manager says, "Give him the pickle. If you can't live by that standard, maybe this isn't the right fit for you. I think we need to discuss your plans for the future at this company." At this point, I'm flabbergasted. I can see residual recognition in the manager's eyes, but it's clear he doesn't know who I am or remember that I don't actually work for him. So me, with my mouth open and closing like a dying fish, "But I quit." He says, "Well, if that's how you feel." The Karen is cackling. I say, "No, I quit." Stupidly unable to communicate past tense. He says, "So who's your supervisor? I'll radio them to come complete your exit." So me, still dying fish before epiphany, "You know what? Screw this. I don't need pants that bad." And I promptly left, out the wrong door. I had to walk all the way around the mall to get to my car without going back through the store, but I wasn't going in ever again. So later, I call up my friend who still works there. This is where I eventually got the handy uniform change info. I relay the whole stupid story ready for a laugh. She responds, "Oh my gosh, that was you? He spent hours trying to figure out who walked off." He's probably thinking, "Well, we lost an employee today, but I'm not sure which one. I'm not even sure they were an employee. But you know, you wouldn't have this problem if you bought this new shirt. Go ahead and throw this thing on, stare right at the Karens, and then just walk away." I had a comment from Inverted Cow Plays suggest I make a shirt that says, "No Karen, I don't work here." And I decided to take that and just simplify it a little bit more. Now you can wear this wherever you want just to notify everyone around you that you don't in fact work there. Who knows, maybe you could even use that shirt to quit a job. Anyways, enough shameless self-promotion. Let's move on to, you want me to work for you after you lay me off? So back in about 2008, my dad was working for a network company. They provided the backbone for internet and network for a lot of companies across the US. Well, one morning he was working, and his boss's boss calls him into the office. Well, he gives the standard, "Sorry, but we're downsizing" speech. He wasn't happy for sure, but things happen. So he signed the paperwork saying that he no longer works there, and he is not allowed to do any sort of work for them, important later. So he and his now old boss go to lunch as a goodbye. The boss even told him half joking that if he had known this was coming, he could have taken one of those brand new servers that they had dropped off at his desk a couple days before. They both laughed, they said goodbye, and went on their way. Well, I should tell you what my dad did there. He managed all of their core routers across the US, so every bit of data across the network went through them, and he was the only one. So for his entire employment there, he'd always get paged with issues at 3 a.m. So he gets home, he starts to relax. Well, about an hour later, he gets a call from his boss's boss. That convo went something like this. "Hey D." I say, "Hey boss, what do you need?" He says, "Well, we have a problem up here." "Oh yeah, what is it?" "Well, you see, no one here has the master password for the routers, and we need you to give it to us." My dad says, "Oh yeah? Well, according to the paperwork I just signed, I'm not allowed to do any work for you, and that would be work. So, tell you what, hire me as a one-time consultant for $10,000 and I'll be more than happy to give it to you." The boss says, yeah, let me get back to you on that. Never heard from them again. For them to get the password, they would have had to send out a tech to each router to hook up to it and reset the password. You can't do it remotely. He got a new job at MCI soon after, for about 5 years until he retired for good. He still laughs at them today. I'm pretty sure that sooner or later my dad would have given them the password, but I think he wanted to make them worry and regret what they did a bit beforehand. I mean, the company probably should have learned a little bit more about what this guy did before firing him. I mean, something similar happened to me a couple years ago. I get laid off from a job because they just decided to mass hire a bunch of people and then realized they couldn't pay anyone. So they laid me off, even though I had been there much longer than some of the new people. And then the next day, they called me back saying, "Hey, so after we laid a bunch of people off, one of the other employees got upset and they quit, so now we're down a person. Would you want to come back and work with us?" And I said, "No thanks, I'm not interested in you guys anymore." Alright, let's go along with Whataburger bathroom surprise. So I ran into a wild Karen and her kid at Whataburger a few minutes ago. I have arthritis in both my knees and cannot walk well. I have to use the handicapped stall, so I have the bars there. I was minding my own business in the stall when I heard 2 people enter. Someone tries my stall door. I call out, "Occupied." I hear a child say, "I can just use the small one." So I think this is over and done with. Nope. This woman starts banging on the stall door, demanding I hurry up because she has to help her daughter in the family stall. I just reply with, "Occupied," again. The woman continues to pound the stall door. At this point, I'm irritated, but I don't hurry. I continue to take my time and finish up slowly. After I open the stall door, I make eye contact with this mother. I don't know how I kept my calm, but I did. I said, "I deeply apologize for the fact that I'm disabled and must use the disabled stall due to the fact that I need the help of the bars to stand back up. I also apologize for the fact that this is not a family stall, but a handicapped one." I looked at her kid briefly. She was about 7 to 10 years old. Why does she need help in the bathroom anyway? I washed my hands and left the bathroom. Ugh. Just ugh. Ooh, you don't mess with people's bathroom time. That is not the time or place to be making conversation. Just let people do their business and move along. And another quick one called $250 to turn on a power strip. So I used to own an all-around tech company. We did it all. Well, my team did. A lot of our work was sales and tech support. We had a contract with a bank in 5 Points, Atlanta that had issues about every single weekend. We got a nice bump in pay for any weekend trips to fix their nonsense. Yes, it was always nonsense. This is just the story that sticks out in my head the most. So it was a Saturday in the late 2000s, around 2008 I think. We get a call that the main teller station won't turn on. Knowing these people, I asked her to check and make sure that everything was plugged in and the power strip was turned on. The teller told me that she already checked all that. She's not stupid. Well, I inform her that being a weekend that if I show up it's going to be a $250 charge no matter what the issue was, base charge. She told me to get off my butt and hurry up. So I roll into the bank and the first thing I did was push the power button just to make sure it don't boot. Sure enough it don't. So then I notice. This dumb lady has her purse on the power strip connected to the computer. I move it, and sure as crap the dang thing is off. I flip the switch, press the power button, and boom, what do you know, it freaking lives. Side note, all our calls were taped, so I played the tape for the bank manager the next day. This poor sap was getting hosed every other weekend it seemed for stupid service calls like this. Needless to say, the teller who messed up had to pay for this call, or she was gonna get canned. Man, I think most tech support workers can relate to this. Did you make sure it's plugged in? Did you turn it off and on again? Oh, that fixed the problem? Alright, bye. Okay, now let's move into the big story, and then we've got a pretty loaded question of the day. As you can see, this video is probably pretty long. So this story is called, Entitled Mom Sues Me After Her Son Tried to Steal My Purse. So before I start, I'm from Germany and this story took place there. Please keep that in mind because our laws might be slightly different. So in the early 2010s, I was trying on sneakers in a shoe store downtown with my purse lying next to me on the floor. I'm blind and deaf on my right side, brain surgery gone wrong. But I'm okay considering the circumstances, and so I didn't even really see the teenager who sneaks up, grabs my purse and starts booking it out of the store. If he hadn't started running, I probably wouldn't have even noticed he had taken my bag. Without really thinking, I start after him, and since I was wearing my new sneakers from the store, a store clerk runs after me. The kid makes it about 200 yards before I catch up with him. Now, I didn't try to tackle him, I just wanted to grab him, and we lost our balance. The poor guy tries to catch his, or our fall, with me on top of him. He was maybe 150 pounds. I was maybe 185, and there's a sickening crunch. Textbook Galeazzi fracture. I instantly feel horrible for the chap and try to see what's wrong. The clerk from the shoe store is standing there staring at us, trying to figure out what just happened. The kid's clutching his arm and trying to act tough. He might even have tried to get back up and keep running, but there were too many people around us now, and he changed his mind. I asked for an ambulance to be called, but it's the police who showed up first, called by the store, and asked what happened. I explain, the store clerk explains, a few witnesses chip in. The police asks if I want to press charges, and I say something like, I think he's been punished enough. Forward about a month, in short succession, I get 2 letters. One informing me that the police is looking into battery charge against me. The second is a summons into court, and can't believe my eyes. I have been sued by the purse snatcher for damages for pain and suffering. They wanted something around 8,000 euros for the broken wrist. Luckily, I have an awesome lawyer, who is also my cousin, and we appear in court at the appointed time. While we wait for the case to be called, the kid sits on a bench, his arm in a brace, looking a bit sheepish. Next to his lawyer stands his mother, glaring daggers at me. We get called inside, and Lawyer 1 starts to elaborate in great detail how I threw myself on top of the kid while he was on the ground and so caused his injury, which in turn took surgery to fix. It's hard for me to keep quiet, but I bite the inside of my cheek and hold my tongue. Once his lawyer is done, my cousin gets up and the first thing she does is inform the judge that the injury was caused during a crime, explaining about the purse snatching. The judge pauses, looks at the lawyer, and asks if he's aware of this. He says yes, but that it shouldn't matter because in their view I caused the injury deliberately, and therefore the circumstances should not matter. As long as I wasn't defending my health, I had no right to injure a child. The judge has 2 questions. Were there witnesses, and why were there no charges filed against the thief? My cousin produces statements from the witnesses. The first police report of the incident and the documentation about the suspended investigation about whether or not I should be charged for battering. She also informs the judge that the police had followed my wish in not filing charges for theft and explained that I felt the kid suffered enough due to his injury. This is where the entitled mom makes her first big mistake. She interrupts my cousin before she can finish and says something like, obviously she was afraid she was getting in trouble for what she did to my poor child, and the police did not do their job properly. The lawyer tries to shush her and apologizes to the judge, saying his client is clearly in emotional distress over her child's injury. Her poor child, he was 17, meanwhile sits in his chair behind the lawyer and the entitled mom looking like he's trying to disappear into the floor. The judge, in an unusual move for a German court, asks the kid directly if he thinks I injured him on purpose. He sort of shrugs, and right there, the entitled mom makes the mistake number 2. That fat cow threw herself onto my poor child when he was lying in the street. She should be locked up. Now, in Germany, you can't just say rude things like fat cow to someone, even if they're true. At least the fat part. Especially not in court. My cousin turns around to me and silently mouths, wow. There's even a murmur of reaction from about 3 or so other people sitting in the back of the court. Many court proceedings are open to the public in Germany. The judge looks at the entitled mom, who is again being shushed by the lawyer, not quite as gently this time, and who stage whispers, it's true. When all is quiet again, the judge wants a few more seconds, just glaring at the entitled mom, teacher style. Then the judge looks at the lawyer and asks, do you want to proceed with this nonsense? Before the lawyer can say no, it would have made the court cost cheaper, I think. The entitled mom says, yes. The judge nods, declares the case dismissed, orders all costs, court, and both lawyers to be paid by the claimant, and then turns to me and asks if I want to file charges for libel. My cousin nods enthusiastically, so I say, yes. The judge announced that she'd speed things up and asked the lawyer if he'll be representing the entitled mom. He nods. The entitled mom seems to have lost the plot and keeps asking him what's going on. Before the lawyer can even explain to her what's about to happen, the judge makes it official and awards me 150 euros in damages, and again decides that all costs and lawyer costs should be carried by the entitled mom. My favorite thing about this, my lawyer is my cousin, and she wouldn't have charged me more than absolutely necessary, but she's also working in a prestigious law firm with 4 partners, who rake up a combined 6 PhDs, and which is not cheap. I don't remember the exact amount that entitled mom ended up getting billed with, but it was a good chunk. And then there's a few extra notes. So it's a wrist injury with a dislocation and fracture of the ulnar. Also, this was a hearing for damage claims. The investigation by police and prosecutor had already conducted that I had not caused the boy's injuries on purpose, and been suspended. Also, in German court is mostly just the lawyers talking to the judge, and us mere mortals only speak if and when we get asked a question. He's not completely wrong about that given our laws, and I agree with him. Stealing a purse should not give someone permission to do you bodily harm on purpose. Well, I'd say that story turned out pretty well. But let's jump into the question of the day, which is, what's the creepiest/scariest thing you've seen but no one believes you? Now, since we haven't had a question of the day for the past couple days, I think, we're gonna go extra long with this one because there are some interesting stories. So I saw a panther-sized black cat darting out of a water retention / artificial forest near a school in the desert. Logically, it shouldn't be able to survive there, but holy crap, I saw it. Animal control wouldn't let that exist. There isn't really food enough for it, and the summers get dangerously hot if you've got black fur. Must have been 4 to 5 feet long. It doesn't make sense, but I 100% saw it, and so did the friend I was with. It seems unlikely, but I think back in like 8th or 9th grade once, I saw a mountain lion while walking to school, and I'm not really sure where that one came from. So I woke up to something. It sounded like a door shutting. At first I thought it was a dream because I could hear it in the dream as I was waking up. Kinda like when someone calls your name when you're dreaming, but then I looked at my cat. His hair was completely standing up and he was beaming at my bedroom door. This was at the moment when I got really scared because I know animals can pick up on that crap, and I thought he might know something's wrong. My cat doesn't do this type of thing unless a dog is in the room. So I look over at the door, and the only way I can describe it is, it looked like it was swaying, slowly, like it was breathing, like something was standing on the other side trying to hear if I was awake. This swaying was accompanied by a shadow. I don't mean like a supernatural shadow, but it looked like the shadow of a person behind the door. I was paralyzed in fear. I lied there for 5 minutes, naked, watching this door away. I considered yelling and trying to scare them away, but I was terrified someone might respond. I legitimately thought this was the moment where I will have to defend myself or be killed. I don't own a gun, but after 10 minutes or so, I mustered up the courage to check every room in the house. I've even checked every corner too, but there was no one there. I don't know what happened, but my evolutionary traits kicked in and I completely believed someone was outside my door. Man, that kind of thing freaks me out. Especially when you get waken up to a noise that you just have no idea what it was, because it tends to really disorient you and you have no idea what's going on. And in your mind, you're just so sure that something terrible is happening, but you're like too afraid to check. So when I was around 9 or 10, this guy who looked about 40 just kept being in every single public place I was in. With my parents or not, he was there. At the store? Yeah, he was there. Bought everything me and my family bought. In school? Yeah, he was staring at me on the other side of the school gate. Out in the city? Yes, following me in the streets. I told my parents so many times and they just ignored me, and said I needed to stop believing everything my brother says, since my brother was really into creepy stuff at the time. He was 14. So one day, this guy had just disappeared. The next thing I knew was that one of my friends kept seeing the guy everywhere. She many times pointed that the guy was outside the school gate watching her. I never saw him on the other side of the gate. Then she told me the guy disappeared after a few weeks. Then this other kid started telling everyone about the guy following him. About 7 months passed and I moved to another town. Still gives me the creeps. Yeah, I mean, if there's a 40-year-old guy stalking some little kids, that's kind of messed up that adults wouldn't believe you when you told them. So not quite sure how young I was at the time, but it was probably between 5 and 8. I was in my babysitter's bed at the time in her trailer park. It was 3 a.m. and I had woken up because I had to pee. When I woke up, I looked down the hall to see my babysitter leaning against the wall like one of the stereotypical cool guys do in movies. And I made eye contact and I felt my body go cold because she was still sound asleep next to me in bed. I went under the blankets trying to hide, and when I looked back, she was gone. I didn't want to sound crazy, so I've never told anyone. I just sat in her bed watching infomercials until 6 a.m. when she woke up. Never even thought about sleeping there again. I honestly forget how much this affected me until I started writing this. Really freaked me out, man. Man, I love creepy stories like this. I would honestly love to add sort of like a horror segment on this channel where I just tell creepy stories instead of funny. I mean, comedy and horror are really the only two genres that get me interested, but I'm not really sure how to incorporate like scary stuff mixed with comedy stuff, so it would get a little messy. So I used to have a buddy that lived in the same neighborhood, a few streets over. One night we were having a couple of beers in his backyard while playing cards. I had some things to do the next morning, so just before 10 I said my goodbyes and shoved off. It was a short walk, maybe 15 minutes door to door, so I never drove. Anyway, it was a nice night. Uneventful trip, but when I got home, my roommate was coming out the front door, coffee in hand and dressed for work. He gave me a funny look and said he thought I was asleep since my truck was in the driveway. I told him where I'd been and asked why he was going to work at night. That's when he kinda laughed and asked if I was drunk. We stared at each other for a minute and then he told me it was just after 5 in the morning, and he was just going in like he usually did. In my entire life, I'd never felt more confused than I did in that moment. I could tell he was dead serious, but I knew I had just left my friend's house. I checked my phone and sure enough, 5-something in the a.m. My roommate left for work. I paced circles in the living room for a bit and then called the friend whose house I'd just left. He groggily answered and confirmed I'd left at 10 the previous evening. I had no idea what happened during those 7 hours of my life, and it gives me chills to think about it all these years later. I wasn't drunk, I wasn't tired, no one could have slipped anything into either of the 2 Coors Lights I had. No known medical conditions that would have caused me to black out, and nothing has happened like it since. I just don't know what happened at that time. Yeah, I've read a few stories like this one. It is really strange that sometimes it seems like a big chunk of time just disappeared. I don't know, maybe it's aliens. So I was walking back to class from the dining hall on my campus when I saw a lady yelling for help and banging on a window of a nearby building. Lots of people were walking past, but I was the only one who seemed to acknowledge it. I went to the window to help, and she told me she was locked in a room in the building and that she needed me to come in and open the door. Now, I have no idea the layout of this building and where she was located, so I decided to call the campus security for help despite her pleading with me not to call them and to just let her out. I call them, and when I hear them coming, I go to greet them so I can take them to the window. I leave for maybe a maximum of 15 seconds, and when I return with campus security, she's gone. We can't see her at the window, and campus security goes inside to double check, and sure enough, there's no trace of her. The campus security definitely thought I was crazy, and I'm sure my professor thought I was full of crap when I explained to him why I was late. No one seems to believe me that this happened, but I swear it did. And we've got one more, which is, I had my laptop in my bed just before going to sleep. It wasn't plugged in, it was on battery. I made an offhand comment on some website about how I wasn't scared of ghosts and didn't believe in them. Then I turned it off and went to sleep with the laptop beside me in bed. The next morning I try to power it on, nothing happens, but the laptop feels unusually light. That's when I realized the battery had been physically removed and placed in the kitchen. I was alone in my apartment and do not have a history of sleepwalking at all. So by this creepy logic, is he implying that a ghost heard him saying that he didn't believe that ghosts were real, and then decided to take his battery and move it into the other room? I don't know, but I really find these creepy stories interesting, and it is crazy when something happens that seems to only affect you, and then you can't even get anyone to even believe that it happened. But I wouldn't say that these are the type of stories where everyone clapped. Anyways, that's all for today's stories, so once again, there's a link in the description for my merch, so thanks to everybody for watching, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.